On January 16th, 2025, Assetto Corsa EVO finally got its long-awaited early access release. Not to be confused with the mod for vanilla AC, this is probably the most anticipated sim racing game in quite some time. And seeing that Funnies is trying to gamify the experience, like with the announced free roam map and career system, I was intrigued enough to try it out myself and see what it's all about. Although I do own a wheel setup and still use it from time to time, including for this game, I am most definitely not a full-on sim racer, as I play most of my racing games, whether that be sim or arcade, with this. I swear I should get a new one. So, after playing this game for over 15 hours now, I would like to share my thoughts on this game as a non-sim racer. And despite the foundation of this game looking to be rock solid, there are a variety of things that range from questionable to, well...
No, it just instantly pops.
Oh! Yeah. So without further ado, let's get started and jump right back to that controller to address the elephant in the room. Did they improve the gameplay when not using a wheel? Well, my initial impressions were that the controller and keyboard gameplay felt strange. I was at least able to somewhat control most cars on the default settings, but the controls were pretty numb and unresponsive at times. I then tried the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup, and that's where this feeling seemed to be massively amplified, where the car was almost impossible to move around at higher speeds. In order to make sure I wasn't going insane, I tried using a controller on a fresh, unmodded install of Assetto Corsa, and that game did not seem to have any issues whatsoever, as the controls felt a lot more direct right out of the box. Luckily, Assetto Corsa EVO does allow you to change the way the controller feels, but since they don't seem to have any descriptions for the settings yet, I basically had to test everything myself. And what I found out here is that this setting called Steering Assist Weight seems to make a steering a lot less direct. Even setting this as low as 1% already made cars like the Porsche feel super jerky and sluggish, especially at higher speeds. It also seemed like setting a certain steering lock doesn't do anything and is solely based on the car's own steering range. And being able to limit this to, let's say, 360 degrees, which is what quite a lot of other racing games actually do, would certainly help in improving the driving experience on a controller or keyboard. Besides these two settings that need some fixes, the other settings like the steering filter seem to work decently well in smoothing the feeling of steering on a controller, and adding some curvature and speed sensitivity make it easier to be more precise on it. Here's what I use on my Xbox One controller, and I suggest you should play around with these settings yourself to see what feels best. Regardless, I do think that the controller settings, especially the default ones, need quite some work, but I can at least confirm that, thanks to these settings, I was able to have a somewhat decent driving experience. On a keyboard, however, it looks to be an outright downgrade from vanilla Assetto Corsa. Some of the settings you could adjust previously are completely gone, and the aforementioned settings seem to do nothing here, making this far from an ideal experience. Luckily, these issues don't deter from the fact that the driving model itself felt really good, especially on a wheel of course, outside of a couple of small quirks. And if you want a more in-depth analysis of some of the game's driving mechanics, I'll put a few links in the description. Funnies also managed to make the chase cams feel really good. So if a full-on sim racing game can have both multiple chase cams and make them feel better than, let's say, Gran Turismo 7, and if they can improve the controller and keyboard controls in the future, I think they could be well on their way to make this game a lot more appealing regardless of your input device. But an early access release also often comes with its garden variety of bugs and glitches, and in the case of AC EVO there are a few outright hilarious bugs with the physics model. You may have already seen some clips from other content creators like cars levitating or falling through the floor, but the funniest one is related to the game's tuning settings, because if you change your tire pressure to either the lowest or highest value, then discard the changes, it seems to apply the effect in the opposite direction, allowing you to make your car look jacked up or slammed. The latter of these can even cause the tires to glitch into the ground, and once I gave it a try, well, let me just give you a volume and flickering warning right now. You have been warned.
In reverse, it works.
What the? Sorry for your ears, guys. What the actual fuck just happened?
Every single time I try to do this glitch. Oh, okay. Okay, we broke the game.
It's over. It is actually completely and utterly over. Oh.
Backflip, easy. And we are gone once again. Oh, okay. Yo. Wait for it. Wait for it.
After attempting and succeeding to break this game, it's time to talk about the game's visuals and sound design, which is where I also heard some mixed receptions. For starters, it seems like there are some issues running the game at all, and stuff like VR seems to basically be non-functional, and these responses essentially make it clear that this game still needs quite some optimization. The game does seem to run pretty well on my PC, but even with a 4080 Super and 9800X 3D, I encountered some issues when a high amount of cars are loaded in, and after playing it for a few hours, it seemed like there was some kind of RAM or VRAM leak as its ran progressively worse. But outside of these optimization issues, one of the biggest highlights are the car models, because all 20 of them that are available right now look phenomenal. You can admire these cars in the menus, and if you do, you really have to go out of your way to find things both in and outside of the car that don't look good. And despite GT7 still having an edge over AC EVO due to the former's ludicrous attention to detail, they are just so close to each other that a casual player might not even notice a difference at all. This trend then continues when you look at the interior. Not only do you have a nearly unprecedented amount of control over your car, like moving the sunroof on the Audi S3 and Escort Cosworth, the lighting while inside the cockpit feels just perfect. You're also able to get your first taste of visual customization, which is where you'll find even more impressive stuff like a pretty well made car color system similar to the modern Need for Speed games, and the ability to adjust individual bits and pieces of your car, from individual elements of the interior to even adding LED strips and different lights to race cars. This is then complemented by how the cars sound, and these are also still a bit of a mixed bag, similar to its older sibling. Some do seem to be improved and can sound well both in and outside of the cockpit. But others really don't, although some told me that there are some placeholder sounds and this may be improved in the future. There are also a few other caveats with the car models though. For example, only the Lotus Emira can have its trunk and bonnet inspected, of which the contents look less than great, and that mirrors seem to have some issues at times, from cars randomly disappearing in it to it simply not pointing in the right direction. But the biggest issue isn't related to when you are in control, it is instead when you are losing it and do something like this. 0 damage. There is absolutely nothing. This game features absolutely no visual damage whatsoever. Obviously, vanilla AC wasn't so great in this too, and a common trend with modern racing games seems to be the diminishing of visual damage, but come on, at least some scratches or dents would have been possible without Ferrari sending its army of lawyers after you. The mechanical damage done to your car also leaves a lot to be desired, as I only felt some actual impact on the car's drivability after properly sending it into the wall multiple times. To summarize though, for a game that's about, well, cars, they do seem to have cooked pretty well in this department. The track visuals have also seen an improvement. Racetracks now feel a lot more lively with things like flags, marshal posts, flag displays and whatever these are called, being located across all tracks. What I think is even more impressive though is that all 5 track locations, amounting to 8 layouts in total, have a completely unlimited time and weather system. Even though the dynamic weather system seems to be disabled for now, it does look like there is a lot of freedom when it comes to making your ideal car and track combination. Like here, when I tried to make the MX-5 Cup car race at Laguna Seca a little bit spicier by running it at night and during a downpour. Oh, wait, hold it. Nice, okay. There are also some graphical issues related to this, however, like with the reflections and shadow casting, together with the occasional graphical glitches. But out of all the graphical issues, the strangest one comes right back at the optimization, as some elements, like dashboards and mirrors, are almost permanently running at a much lower frame rate than the rest of the game. Despite mostly running at a stable 60 frames per second or higher, even things like the UI's base tachometer look like they run with at most half of that. Just like with the lighting issues though, this seems something engine related and will also hopefully be improved in the future, and since the graphics overall are pretty good, they should have their work here very nicely cut out for themselves. So now that we've dissected most of the game's fundamentals, it's actually time to see what happens when we take it to the track, and more importantly, what it's like to race against the game's AI opponents. And to put it simply,
Make it. Oh, 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 oh. They are awful. I don't think we're gonna finish this race. At the moment, and probably in the next few months until multiplayer arrives, the only opponents you will get may be artificial, but are definitely not intelligent, as they lack any sort of awareness or sometimes stop functioning altogether. Some of their racing lines are also outright broken, like on Suzuki and Bathurst, and in a full field of cars they sometimes even completely block the racetrack, making it impossible to even finish the race. Even though the AI seems to be at least mostly fine and reasonably fast when they drive on their own, when set at a high quote-unquote skill level, which seems hilarious to even say in this context, this and the optimization issues seem to be the biggest points of improvement for the near future. One smaller point that's better is the UI, as unlike base Assetto Corsa, of which the UI was so bad that we needed a separate launcher, it actually feels much more like an actual game now. It also helps that you can look up specific names of keybinds, but it would be useful if there are more subgroups to this, as well as making the names for some of them more intuitive, like change camera view instead of drivable for car camera positions. There's also actual menu music now, but it seems to be copyrighted, so I would recommend you turn it off while recording or streaming this game. And that brings us to practically everything Assetto Corsa EVO has to offer for now, as they promise to have a constant stream of content drops, as well as that coveted open world area of the Nürburgring and its surroundings of the beautiful German Eifel. As someone who has actually driven here in real life, I can say that this will likely be a dream come true for many, and combined with other features announced like more car customization, license tests, special events and even a career mode, I can see this becoming a pretty comprehensive game for a wide range of sim racing fans. There's just one issue with all of this though, as my first sentence of this section, in particularly for now, actually has another much darker meaning. You see, originally they announced that these special events, Driving Academy, and a first version of an in-game economy system would be available from the start, but I wasn't able to show and discuss these here. The reason? They are locked behind an online connection. You heard that right. Most of this game's content is seemingly going to be locked behind an always online functionality, and with this being such a big release, well... As someone who has personally seen games like The Crew become completely inaccessible because of this, it really sucks to see Kunos do this as well. I guess the only reason they could have is due to the aforementioned in-game economy, but besides that, the fact that even cars and customization were originally locked to an internet connection is simply unacceptable, and should not be standard practice in a game like this. If you think about this the same way as I do, feel free to spread the word or even check out StopKillingGames.com, because it would be a shame if some, if not all of this game's content becomes vaporware over time. But that about does it for my in-depth review of Assetto Corsa EVO in its current early access state. What we've been given is a game with good fundamentals like the physics model and the graphics, while also coming with a variety of issues, and although most of these are excusable because the game is, as said, in early access, there are a few others that do worry me for the long term. Personally, and considering it costs €40 or $32 on its initial discount, I would hold off on purchasing this game until they've ironed out some of the biggest issues like the online connection, optimization, and AI, and also after they've added some more content. However, if they do fix most of the current issues, add the promised content like the open world and career mode, and roll out some proper mod support, we may be looking at yet another solid sim racing game from Kunos that could potentially reach a very wide audience, and even be a great alternative to something like Gran Turismo 7. And if the releases of their two other games have taught us anything, I'm confident that in about half a year's time, we'll be racing each other on the track, or enjoying our time in the Eifel Mountains. As long as the servers keep working.